Hello everyone, Mark here from Plate11 Woodworking. In this video, I'm going to show you how to unpack and set up your brand new Plate11 Split-Top Roubo. So while I get the top off this crate, why don't we talk about what tools you're going to need to get it open and put the bench together. To pull the screws from the crate, my preferred driver is a No. 2 Robertson or square bit. A No. 2 Phillips or a combo drive bit would work as well. You'll also need something to drive these bits, and for this I go to my Panasonic hammer drill. It's been a great drill. It comes in a set of two, one driver, one clutch. And if you're a hand tool purist, you can always do it the old-fashioned way. The screws I use in the crate are really good wood screws. Pull them all out and save them. Next up, you're going to need a 3/4 inch or 19mm deep socket and ratchet, as well as a 1/2 inch or 13mm open-end wrench. You're also going to need a size 50 Torx. I prefer the combination of an adapter for the hammer drill with a 3/8 square drive on it and a socket with the torque bits mounted permanently inside. You can also get by with a 5/16 inch nut driver with a Torx insert bit, but you can see the setup is kind of rickety. You'll need a heavier hammer like a 2 to 3 pound sledge or lump hammer, and a smaller hammer for setting the groove pin that attaches the vise hand wheels to the screw. A 3/16 Allen wrench. T-handles are most convenient. You'll also need a large standard or slotted screwdriver and a little bit of light machine oil. Okay, it looks like I've got the top off the crate. Let's take a look at what's inside. Up first we have the leg vise chop and the long front rail. If you ordered a dead man with your bench, this rail will have an extra piece of trim on it at the top front edge. This is the back long rail. Now we have the Criss-Cross box and the hand wheel box for the leg vise. Here's the tail vise box. We'll take a look at what's inside those three boxes a little later. If you ordered a sliding dead man, planing stop, or shelf, you'll find these in the crate as well. So now that we've got all the small items out of the crate, let's take the sides off to make it a little easier to unpack the bulk of the bench. Start with the front of the crate, as indicated by the French triangle. Remove the screws along the ends and bottom of the panel, and set the panel aside. On the end panels, remove the screws along the bottom and the ends that intersect the back panel of the crate. All that remains is to pull the screws along the bottom edge of the back panel, and you're ready to assemble the bench. First, we'll assemble the base of the bench. Pull the end assemblies off the top of the stack and set them up just a little farther apart than the length of the long rails. If you ordered a dead man, be sure to put the rail with the guide trim on it at the front of the bench. Otherwise, the rails are interchangeable. Now let's take a look at what's in the Criss-Cross box. We've got 8-inch bolts with cross-drilled barrel nuts, the pivot pin for the Criss-Cross, the escutcheon plate, mounting pins, 4 Spax lag screws to attach the top to the base, the arms for the Criss-Cross, and the screw for the glide. If you ordered a planing stop, you'll find the hardware in this box as well. Before you put the top on the base, I recommend you thread the lag screws into their holes. When I build the bench, the screws self-tap the clearance holes through the rails. So if you're careful to slowly turn the screw backwards and wait for it to click into place, you can easily screw them into the rails by hand. There should be almost no resistance. You should run them all the way up and check to see that the threads are indeed in their grooves. This will prevent any cross-threading when you screw them into the top. Repeat the process with the remaining screws. Next up, you're going to insert the bolts and barrel nuts and hand tighten with a 3/4 inch or 19mm deep socket. Don't tighten them with the ratchet until the end of the assembly process. Now it's time to install the first criss-cross arm into the vise leg. You'll need the 3/8 diameter by 5-inch long mounting pin for this step. Be sure to install the arm so that the small bump at the bottom faces away from the leg. This is the most common assembly mistake people make. If the arm is installed facing the wrong way, the vise won't close. Now let's take a look inside the handwheel box. We've got the remaining hardware for the glide, 3 aluminum crinkle-coated knobs, and the handwheel itself. To mount the handwheel on the screw, we're going to need the escutcheon plate and the mounting pin. If you look closely at the pin, you'll notice there are grooves along its length. On one end, the grooves are shallow, and on the other, they are deep. The shallow end goes in first. We're going to put a little light machine oil on the face and put the escutcheon on there. Be sure to point the countersunk side of the holes away from you. Then put a little oil on the shaft of the screw and insert it into the handwheel. Once you've got everything lined up and the pin facing the right way, you're going to tap it in with your small hammer. Since I'm going to be shipping this crate to a customer, I need to be able to disassemble it for packing. So I'm going to use a 16-penny nail and, of course, a little bit of blue tape. Once that's done, we can set the assembly aside and mount the other criss-cross arm in the chop. First, you'll need to drive the 8-inch pivot pin into the chop and through the criss-cross arm. Remember to point that little bump at the bottom of the arm away from the chop. Now that the chop and the handwheel are assembled, we can go ahead and put the top on the bench. They should easily drop in place. The outside of the bench are packed facing the inside of the crate to protect them from any damage during shipping. Once the top is on, you can go ahead and tighten the lag screws. If you ordered a sliding dead man, you can install it now. Just insert it into the groove under the front slab and swing it into place. The gap between the two slabs is handy for supporting the chop while you mount the handwheel. You're going to need the 2 countersunk cap head screws for this step. Place the chop with the swing arm between the slabs and slip the vise screw into the chop. The holes for the cap head screws are tapped with threads, so it's important that you drop the screws in place and very slowly spin them counterclockwise until you hear the click. Then you can use the Allen wrench to run them all the way in. To install the leg vise, first insert the screw until it reaches the nut on the back of the leg. Pull the criss-cross arms out and be sure the flat, unprinted faces of the arms are facing each other. Slip the pivot pin into one of the arms. The easiest way I've found to get the two arms lined up is to leave a small space between them so you can see the pin and guide it into the second arm. Once everything is lined up, just push the pin home and add the second clip. Then, test the vise. After that, you'll need to back the vise off a turn and give the entire assembly a shake to settle the criss-cross arms in their place. Then test the vise again. And maybe one more time. Okay, once you're done playing with the vise, it's time to put the knobs on the hand wheel. You have two choices here. You can install the stem and the knob without the little black washer, and the knob will spin freely on the stem. If you put the washer under the head of the stem first, when you tighten the knob down, it will be fixed on the wheel. I suggest you try it both ways and see which one you prefer. Okay, one more test. If you ordered a tail vise for your bench, you'll find much of the hardware already installed, but you'll need to reassemble the vise before you can use it. So let's take a look at what's inside the tail vise box. You've got a hand wheel and one crinkle-finished aluminum knob, the vise hardware kit, and a scutcheon plate with a large washer, and the vise screw. Just like the leg vise, we're going to put a little light machine oil between all the parts. Unlike the leg vise, there's a washer that goes between the screw and the escutcheon plate. Be sure those countersinks on the escutcheon plate face toward the hand wheel. Once you've inserted the screw and lined up the holes, you can drive in the groove pin. Remember, the shallow end of the grooves go in first. Again, you'll drive the pin in with a hammer, but since I'll be breaking this bench down for shipment, I'll be installing it temporarily with a 16-penny nail and a little bit of blue tape. When that's done, you want to insert the two long screws into the escutcheon before you insert the hand wheel assembly into the end cap. And remember, this is a reverse thread screw, so it's not going to go in clockwise. You have to thread the vise screw in a little way before you can bolt it in place. You'll find this step goes smoother if you support the escutcheon to keep the screw from rubbing on the sides of the hole. Once you can insert the screws into their holes and get the plate flat on the end cap, it's time to bolt it into place. If you compare the two washers, you'll notice that one of them has a flat ground into its circumference. Use the round washer to attach the bolt that you can access from the dog slot, and the modified washer for the bolt that you have to access from underneath the bench. Tighten them both down with the 3/16 Allen key and a 13mm or half-inch wrench. When that's done, you can mount the knob on the hand wheel. You want this knob to spin freely, so there are no small black washers included in the hardware kit. If you ordered a planing stop, you'll need to fit it to the bench. I leave this part oversized so that it can be fit to the hole after it has had a chance to acclimate in your shop. Use the leg vise to hold the stop during the fitting process. Remember, you're going to want to make it as tight as you can manage. You'll move the stop up and down with a 2 to 3 pound sledge or lump hammer. If you can get it to move 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch with a solid blow from your lump hammer, you've got it just right. The final step is to tighten the bolts with a 3/4 inch socket and ratchet. And maybe play with the vise a little bit more. I really hope you enjoy your new bench.